back, listeners. This is the Sideboard podcast with your host, Caleb Williamson, and our co-host, Timothy Clunt. How's it going, Tim?
Pretty good. How are you doing, Caleb?
I'm doing solid. Glad that the weather finally cooled off here in Fresno, California.
Yeah, it's been pretty nice. Didn't it rain the other day?
Yeah, which is actually super nice because of all the smoke from the fires and stuff kind of got picked up with the rain, and so it's all clearing out a little bit.
It's definitely been nicer. We're finally getting fall.
Yeah, finally like 2 months in. But yeah, so we had a few events this weekend, which were pretty exciting. We're consistently getting like either 30 to 40 man events or like 130 man events, which is pretty interesting. What do you think about the online events? And I know there's been a lot of discussion about like validity of them. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the online events are fine. The only thing I would say to take with a grain of salt is that most of them are best of one. Mm-hmm. Whereas traditionally our premier events are all best of three because they're in-person events. So some of the top cut results can be a little skewed towards best of one decks. So I would definitely say take the results with a grain of salt, with the understanding that some decks are just better in best of one, and smart people are going to cater towards that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it's just funny that you mentioned that, because a lot of people are starting to mainboard certain tech cards, and we're seeing that in a lot of like Soul Striker lists and Go Tanks lists and Shenron, those decks that have more space than other decks. We're seeing Max Power in the main, Mechikabura in the main, those sort of things, which is, catering to best of one. People have to play those things in order to beat certain matchups.
Yep. It's definitely interesting. I know we briefly mentioned that during the little deck building mini series too.
Yeah, if you guys haven't checked that out, go ahead and check that out. It's our two episode series that we did. It's our last 2 episodes previous to this one. And so check that out. It's just a good overview of deck building, talking about consistency, variance, and those sorts of things.
Yeah. So before we get into some of the results from this past weekend, if you guys are looking to pick up any sealed product, we've got expansion sets coming up, Draft Box 6, and then in a couple months, I think, is Set 12.
Episode 12 of Mandalorian. That's in a few weeks.
Yeah. But
Set 12 is, I think, in January.
Yeah. If you're looking for a sealed product, check out our sponsor, Madtown Games. Their website will be linked below, as well as if you're looking to pick up any singles for any of the decks that we mentioned today, check out our TCG affiliate link. Helps us out a whole bunch, costs you a whopping $0 extra to do so. And then if you want to pick up any sweet merch for the holidays, our merch store is also going to be linked in the description.
Yeah, get a sweatshirt for those chilly days coming up.
They are extremely warm.
Yeah. All right, so back to the events that we had this weekend. So we had 3 main events. We had the PPG event, the TAC Games event, and the event just for Europe in general. And so we just wanted to kind of go over and discuss the variances between the top cut of each event, as well as some surprising turnouts and just kind of overall thoughts. So let's just go over with the PPG event real quick. We have 2 Soul Strikers, 1 Blue Baby, 1 Green Go Tanks, 1 Red Broly, 1 Vegex, 1 Jiren, and 1 Bulma. So right away, and I believe that event was won by Soul Striker, Kevin Zuniga.
Yep.
I know him personally. Good guy. Right away, Jiren stands out to me. It kind of caught my eye right away because I played it in set 9, and I was like, oh, somebody's playing Jiren.
Yeah, I saw some talk about it leading up to the weekend throughout the community page, but I didn't really pay much attention to it just because it's been a busy week.
Yeah, I mean, if your opponent can't deal with barrier cards, then you essentially get to baby hatch every turn for like 3 turns in a row, assuming they hit you to 4 life and you awaken and all that, right?
Yep.
You don't get the 40k swing, but you basically time walk them, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I know that I'm pretty sure that the two Soul Strikers were different lists. I know Kevin's was his kind of blue black Ranger Soul Striker that he's been playing for the last few weeks. And I believe the other Soul Striker list was more of your traditional Soul Striker.
Yeah, I know for sure there was Kevin's, which performed really well. That's the other thing that was interesting. So I was interested in the Jaren deck, and I looked at the list, and it was kind of weird to me. So then I was looking through some of the other lists, and Kevin's deck stood out. And I wasn't really excited to see the list because Soul Striker was pretty straightforward, but he added some spice with the Rangers, which was pretty nice. Seeing them get play, which was cool. And I saw in some discussions he was saying that it really helps like the Sin Shenron matchup and just other yellow decks, because when you have those three, 25, 30 plus attacks that are all double crit on your turn with the 5 and 6 Ranger, they can't really handle that because it'll kill their blocker. The blocker will also kill the Ranger, but you can still put quite a lot of pressure with that engine, and sometimes it even just wins you the game.
Yeah, the Ranger line is still pretty powerful. I think it just needed to find a bit of a new home, and this could be it.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so any other decks from the PPG event that stand out to you? I know one more, but one more that we'll mention, but any that you specifically see, Tim?
I like the fact that we're starting to see Blue Baby in some of the top cuts. It took a little bit. It's kind of sad because the deck's probably going to be dead in another week and a half, but at least it's getting a little bit of limelight before that. Also, the Vegex list, I know that John Lamonterano, if I mispronounced your name, I'm sorry. I know that he was the pilot of that list. I did check out the list. There were a couple of weird choices in there. I thought it was playing the 5-drop TP Vegex, the like ultimate deadly defender. That was a little interesting. Then a couple other like little tech choices I thought were kind of interesting, but
yeah, I feel like that card specifically might just be there for when, because it has barrier, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think it's there for when you're expecting Soul Striker to go into like a double Obuni or double Homer turn.
Yeah.
Because you can't really defend otherwise in black, so you just slap that down and protect it.
Yeah, it's definitely a very powerful card that kind of floodgates the opponent's next turn towards it. Is just, in my experience, Vegex hasn't typically gone to turn 5.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Maybe he was expecting a lot of Sin Shenron or something like that where the game might go a little longer.
Right, yeah. So just rounding this out, we see Green Gotenks, pretty standard, Red Broly, as well as a Bulma list, which this Bulma list surprisingly wasn't running the 6-drop Broly. They were just running the Gogeta chain as well as, the typical red cards. Personally, don't care for the deck. It's not my style. It's like everything red doesn't want to do in a deck that's red to me. But good on you for topping with Bulma. It's pretty interesting. But the other than that, the rest of it's pretty much standard. So let's move over to the TAC event. And
this is wild.
Yeah. The next two events are pretty crazy. And so one thing I just want to note is both of these events are non-United States. They're Australia with TAC, and then EU is obviously Europe. I think you can still play in them if you want to, if you're from the States, but generally they're going to be other countries. And so for TAC event, we see 2 Vegex, 1 Soul Striker, 1 Sin Shenron, 1 Majin Vegeta, 1 Android 13, 1 Green Gotenks, and a Dark Broly.
So some of these are giving me flashbacks from the Oceania event that we commentated.
Yeah, we saw lots of Sin Shenron.
And lots of Dark Broly.
Yep. We see 2 here. in the top 8, which is nice.
Yeah, it's definitely nicer to see than like half of Top Cut.
Right. So a little more variance in, actually it's the same amount of variance, just different decks in this Top Cut. Something that stands out was Android 13 and Majin Vegeta. Didn't expect those decks to show up. We looked over the lists, and Majin Vegeta, actually, I'm pretty sure I know the player. It's Brian Reed.
Okay.
And he plays, the whole point is he plays a very pyramid style chain, so heavy on the lower drops of the Majin chain, then like 1 or 2 of the bigger ones, and the whole point is sack the big one to play the SCR Broly. That's his finisher.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like I can agree and get behind that idea, because the deck really did need some sort of like finishing power.
That's actually pretty cool because it's really easy to put yourself at 1 life with Majin Vegeta. You just have to have a way to pop your 7-drop Boo.
Can't you, does it have Servant? Can't you overlord it?
No, the Majin Boos do not.
Oh, okay.
It's just the
So
Majin Vegetas that have Servant.
Maybe like a Bell mod?
A Bell mod, or I guess if you play like a Paragus.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, so that's a pretty cool deck.
Yeah, that's cool. You can, if you put yourself at 1, you can just rip their hand with the Broly secret.
Yeah.
And then they die. That's a lot of double strikes.
I think that deck has the effect of like, someone has been playing it for quite a while, testing it. They know their matchup spread, and they go to an event where nobody's expecting it. And
just destroy everyone.
Yeah, but then usually what happens is you'll make it to top, but then I mean, I've seen this so many times because I'm usually that guy who plays like the random stuff, and I'll make it to top, or whoever's playing will make it, and then day 2 or Top Cut, you have the advantage of being able to see your opponent's lists typically, and so you get to theorize with your friends or that night, or even just message some people, hey, how do I beat this, right? And so decks like Soul Striker or Sin can start mulling for negates and, just go for survival and that sort of thing. And it really kind of separates the extremely good players from the really good players. Not, trying to bash anybody here, but I'm just saying that it also separates the extremely good decks from the good decks. But that's still pretty interesting that Majin Vegeta made Top Cut.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I've played it here and there with our group, but
it's definitely scary.
It is. I feel like it has the starter Broly effect.
Yeah.
Where when that came out, most of the time you died on turn 2 or 3, and there wasn't a whole lot you could do about it. Kind of feels like the same thing with Majin Vegeta, except I feel like there's more like turning pieces in the deck.
Yeah, it can go a lot of different directions since it's not super heavily invested on like running a chain.
It does feel really bad when you don't get your Majin Buu sealed ball on turn 1, though.
Yeah, definitely.
The deck kind of fumbles.
We saw that a few times in testing. Then the other list that we saw that was completely out of left field was Android 13.
We literally just looked at this again, too.
Yeah, because we were like, where's the 7-drop?
We were looking for big boys, and there were none.
And so after reviewing the list again, kind of going over the turn sequences, we deducted that what we think the game plan is essentially discard the pieces turn 1 to awaken, and then crit them or something.
And then just repeatedly hit their hand.
Yeah, and then just literally...
So it's kind of like... It feels like kind of like Lord Slug, but Android 13 instead.
Right, exactly. It's just like a typical hand control crit deck, which I guess is pretty good if you're not expecting it. It goes the same with the Majin Vegeta of like you weren't expecting it, so it beats you.
Yeah. It was definitely interesting.
Yeah.
Might be fun to build and just play amongst our group.
Yeah, maybe one of those, decks. But other than
see if it actually has some wings to it or not.
Well, it's not Slug, so it can't have wings.
I mean, it could.
Sure.
It's a green charge.
Yeah, whatever, I guess. So continuing on with the TAC Games event, we had 2 Vegex, the Soul Striker, and the Sin. Those are pretty standard, as well as the Green Go Tanks. And then we had Dark Broly, which we've talked quite a lot about on this channel, and I've played quite a lot. I've moved on from it because, I don't own SS3 Tag Team Gohans, so that kind of sucks. But
that reminds me, I need to put them in the deck.
Yeah, you kind of need certain cards to play black decks, and if you don't have them, they just don't perform quite as well. And so, deck's very good. It's very, very good. And it's the same thing we've been saying since, day one of playing it a few times, where it rewards a skilled pilot.
Yeah, you definitely need a good amount of testing and a pretty varied amount of testing.
Yeah.
With Dark Broly. Because that deck the sequencing is extremely important.
Right.
And it's going to go differently in every matchup.
Mm-hmm.
There's some matchups where you want the Dark Broly that rips out of their hand first. Some decks, like against Green Go Tanks, you probably want to go for the SR so you can warp their Goku turn 1. Because that kind of stops what they're doing a little bit, hurts them from finding their fusion pieces. Or against hyper aggro matchups, you probably want to go for the blocker turn 1.
Yeah.
I mean, every matchup's going to be different. It also really depends on your mills. But it's got a high skill cap.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that goes with black decks in general. Like, Vegex is far more forgiving because you mill a larger number of cards, and your cards just do things. Like, they just have effects. You don't really have to... Like, you have to sequence, but you don't have to...
Not nearly as much.
Think, like, when am I going to play this Broly? What am I going to warp for playing this Broly? And all these sorts of things. But it's good to see, just like you said with Baby, it's good to see some representation for Dark Broly and some topping with it.
Definitely.
I think this event was won by Vegex. I'm not sure, but just want to talk about that for a second. Let's just assume it was won by Vegex. And so Soul Striker and Vegex don't play very much in the sense of an archetype, which is kind of counter to what we saw in the Set 11 meta.
Yeah, I mean, the only real archetype to Vegex is the starter deck engine that plays for free, but they don't do anything with each other. It's just your leader's a Black Saiyan, you milled them, so play them.
Yeah, I feel like they're almost like a zero investment archetype.
Yeah, it's strictly upside.
Yeah.
Outside of that, you can really do whatever you want with Vegex. I don't think the actual Vegex line is what you want to be playing in the deck anymore. I definitely think people should be playing 3 to 4 Majin Buu extinction attacks.
Yeah, we're seeing
that card is snapped in every matchup.
We're seeing it a lot. I mean, we've tested, me and you, quite a lot of games, and you play Vegex mostly, and I've played a large variation of decks, and it just giving you that additional gas of milling up to 4 as well as warping my drop. It hits, anything in the drop down to like a fusion piece for Gogeta, right? Like that's...
Yeah, or like a fusion piece for Gotenk, so then if you get rid of the Reaper, they don't get both pieces back.
Right.
Or against Sin Shenron, you can get rid of their 1-drop ball before you warp the big boy, so now they can't go into another 1-drop. It just has so much versatility to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so things like that are just generically good, and I think that's why we're seeing these decks winning the events, because they're just the best overall generic 50 to 60 cards in their pool of color. And that typically is why archetype-based decks are... Because with an archetype, it's tough because usually you have a natural counter. And so to beat the natural counter, you either have to not play it or... stray away from the archetype and play something else, which decreases consistency and makes it your other matchups less, less likely to be consistent.
Yeah. And another thing about Vegex that's kind of unique in the sense that this doesn't apply to most other decks, Vegex doesn't really care about any of the counterplays, like at all.
Yeah. Yep, because you're not investing. It's a zero investment deck, really. Because, like, even when I was, we were playing and you would mill and you'd flip, like, Vegeta, Kai, Trunks, right? And I'd be like, oh, counterplay Frieza or something and be like, kill your.
Yeah, you have to choose between basically the Trunks or the Kai.
Yeah.
So either I'm going to get a block out of it or I'm going to lose some combo power.
Yeah, your leader says, draw a card, flip 5, and get a swing, a block, and an attack out of it. Or, a swing, a block, combo. And a super combo out of it. And so...
And sometimes a unison.
And that's, on perfect mills, obviously. But with the addition of Majin Buu attack, you can increase the consistency of getting those mills and decrease the variance.
Yep.
And so just this generically... It's the same with Soul Striker, because you're playing cards like Obuni, who are going to untap one on your opponent's next turn, but then your leader's Soul Striker, so you swing and you untap 2 more. So now your 1 mana Obuni got you 4 attacks, and you only invested essentially one mana into it.
Yep. And that leaves you with, oh my god, a Gohan negate.
Yep. Or a few D-Magics, or even, the Trunks Heroic Prospect, or literally anything that you desire. Or you can combo, if they swing lead and don't combo, you can combo Ape away and draw 2 next turn. Because if you don't need that extra energy, your leader just says free Ape.
Yep.
So your leader is swing, draw 3.
It's pretty good.
Pretty good. But yeah, so I think it's just interesting how we're seeing these generic decks winning and these archetype-based decks topping.
It's kind of, I don't know, I feel like it's kind of nice that it's gotten back to that, because it felt like archetype-based formats for a while.
Yeah, it just requires people to adapt. That's 90% of the game, adapting to playing the field. And so, yeah. Well, let's get into the third event. And I just wanted to give a little mention to where we're getting this info from. It's Joey, Crossworld TCG's channel. Just give a little peek-sees at that video if you haven't seen it. He goes over all these similar to how we're doing.
But a little more in depth.
A little more list involved, and we're just kind of talking about our interpretation of the field and kind of what the field was, right? And so how does these decks get to the destination from where they were, right?
That, and it's also kind of interesting because it's basically the end of the raw set 11 format.
Yeah.
Because next week we're getting expansions, and then the following week, or no, I think we're getting both next week, expansions and Draft Box 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is basically the end of set 11 format.
Yep. So, and honestly, I don't think much is going to change. I don't think a whole lot's going to change.
I think there's a few surprises we might have coming up in the next couple weeks.
We'll see. So just heading into the third event that we're going to cover here, we have the top 4 from the EU event. I'm not sure how many players it was. I think it was like 30-something, or I don't remember, but we have Vegex, Blue Baby, Invoker, and Golden Frieza. So
I've not heard the words Golden and Frieza in a very long time.
Yeah. Yep. Coming from my perspective, because I've been playing, since like the demo decks from set 1, Golden Frieza has always been that deck that
he's lurking. He's always lurking.
One player plays and plays religiously, and then out of nowhere they top somewhere.
Yeah, I feel like Golden's always lurking in the shadows, just ready to pop out.
Yeah, definitely. And it's one of those decks where if you spend the time to play it quite a lot, it'll reward you with some tops. I don't think it's ever going to win again.
Probably not.
Maybe best of 1, but not best of 3.
It'll definitely, it can get you into top cuts at the right time.
Yeah. And so the other 3 decks, Invoker, nice to see that again. For some opinions, some not so nice. Personally, I think it's a pretty cool deck. It's kind of reminiscent of the general combo deck / / control deck of the game. And then Blue Baby, it's cool to see that topping, because honestly, I don't like seeing archetype based cards in the non-archetype deck and abusing the fact that they don't say you can only play this if you're in X leader or X color or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like, low-key bugs me. But
Okay.
like the Baby Engine, for example,
being in like Soul Striker and
being
stuff.
in Soul Striker, it's like, okay, but that's not what it was meant for, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a competitive player's thing, is that you take the best cards and put it in the best deck. But sometimes I wish, like, what if the counter and the Baby Unison said, if your leader is Baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
Soul Striker would not be doing what it's doing.
Definitely not. Like 1,000% not.
1,000% not. And so I feel like sometimes Bandai overlooks these things and is like, oh yeah, yellow, everything, it has to be Sen Shenron. Red has to be Gogeta. Green has to be Gotenks leader. And then blue, you could play whatever you want in blue.
Basically,
and then also black. Most of the time you can play whatever you want in black.
Except for the Dark Broly stuff.
Yeah.
That is like incredibly leader locked.
Yes. But yeah, there's my rant for blue cards.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I mean, we've seen that like periodically with each color, I feel like, though. Maybe not every set, but every few sets, it feels like one color just gets the general good stuff treatment.
Could you imagine in Draft Box 4 format if Topo was red instead of one red?
It would have not been played nearly as much.
Nope. It's the little things, man. It's the little things.
And that's basically the difference between Saiyan Instincts and Ribrianne.
Yeah. What if Saiyan Instincts was yellow? It wouldn't see play at all.
And locked to a yellow leader.
Yeah.
Or what if Ribrianne was two colorless and not leader locked to green?
Yeah. Yep.
Those kind of things. I think that would make Toa like probably busted.
Which one? Oh, the Ribrianne in Toa?
Yeah.
Oh, so like black green?
Yeah, well, you would just ditch the Ribriannes because it would cost you two colorless.
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah. That's another thing I've been wanting to see is dual color black decks. So
or
like
even
X.
that could even have like brought a resurgence of like some sort of Shenron hand control type of thing too.
Mm-hmm. What if there were deck building limitations and more of those? Like, if you want to play this line, your whole deck has to be mono blue, or something like that, where you can't run Overrealms or Saiyan Instincts or FDC.
I mean, that was basically the ISRs though.
True. Yeah.
And the only one that gets played is the black one.
And that's like not even a little bit.
Yeah, it's like in Hatch and then like in some Vegex sideboards.
Right.
Because some of them sideboard the Son Goku making an entrance, the negate.
Right. I don't know. I'm not that I'm like, because like our team has been on Soul Striker for quite a while, or at least like Marcus and Joey have, and I don't know. It's just like the blue as a color seems like it doesn't have any inherent weaknesses if it can play Saiyan Instincts.
That's true, because then its only inherent weakness it can get out of,
right.
Which is hand control.
Right, and so you have to flip a coin to see if you can aggro under its defense package and kill it fast enough before it gets to mid to late game.
Which is possible.
Yeah,
there are definitely decks that are fast enough to do that.
Yeah, like Reboot Gohan and Majin Vegeta and Red Broly and things like that. It's just tough because then it becomes, all right, flip the coin. Who gets to go first? Instead of two players at high skill levels, being able to sequence with each other.
Yeah. I don't know. It does kind of come down to that, but I mean, especially in the Soul Striker situation, you can get under it because I mean, so best case scenario for them is they go Unison, say they play a Zeno. I don't know if the list plays Zeno anymore, but probably not. But let's say they did. They flip a mono blue with it, attack with something and beam one of the other energy up. And then they have a Heroic Prospects Trunks for defense with the 1 energy. That's like best case scenario, but the deck doesn't even play Zeno anymore. So it's literally not possible for them to survive turn 2 if that's your kill turn. So even if you go second.
Yeah, the problem is that they don't play that anymore. They play just 4 of the baby unison. Yeah. And so turn 1 and 2, they're doing nothing. They're just playing defense, and then they're doing Sane Instincts on their turn or passing.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. They're not going to have the energy up to just stop a kill turn unless they just like have baby hatch and they use it turn 2 to not die, and then they probably just kill you on the crackback.
They can't use it turn 2. It requires 3 energy.
You're right. I knew that.
But yeah, I think
if you're going to try to get under a deck like Soul Striker, you have to commit to that before you even start your opening hand.
Yeah, which is extremely tough because what if you don't draw, your stuff? That's why we're seeing decks like Reboot play 16 Self-Awakeners, because they're like, okay, I have a 2-turn window to kill you.
Yeah.
And it's turn 1 and it's turn 2.
Yep.
And we were discussing with one of our locals, he was saying like, why don't you play like more Champas or something like that? And I was like, bro, I have literally over the course of the game 3 energy to work with.
Maximum.
Let's assume I awaken 4 energy.
Yeah.
If I'm mono green, right? So am I going to spend 25% of my energy to double strike them, or 25% of my energy to triple crit, right? And so basically what my point is that your game plan when playing against certain decks that can just run generically good cards has to be so condensed that if you make a mistake, you basically lose the game.
Yep.
Whether it be offensively against Soul Striker or defensively against Vegex.
Yeah, we're kind of in a point where it's coming down to players on both ends having to recognize their very small window of opportunity on either end.
Yep. And I think that stems from so many free things.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. I mean, the game's kind of gotten to a point where every deck can do something for free.
Right. Yep. But I don't know. I enjoy it when both players are like back and forth, like super high
interaction.
Yeah, interaction, and just like I disrupt your play, you disrupt my play, and so forth. It's a lot of fun.
I agree with you.
But yeah, is there anything you want to talk about going into the draft box and expansion formats? Any deck you're looking forward to? Got your eye on? I was kind of underwhelmed a little bit with the draft box itself.
Yeah, I was kind of feeling the same way. I mean, there's some obvious cool stuff, but it's like those couple decks are almost completely draft box. Like right. Harudagarn or the Bardock stuff. Like those seemed cool, but I don't think I'd ever play them. There are a few just very generically good cards. 2 of them, I've talked about a lot. They're obviously black cards, the Toa Unison and the Demigra with both Overrealm and Dark Overrealm.
Yeah, I don't think we've talked too much about the Toa Unison on here, but the first thing that we noticed, or Tim noticed, was that its ultimate ability is essentially the same as Mechikabura, the yellow Unison, in the sense that you can just steal something, and the Unison itself doesn't require any leader restrictions.
No restrictions at all.
So you can run that in your sideboard, or even if your main is able to run it. One of the things that you're giving up, though, is counterplays, because you're no longer a colored Unison.
That's true, but I mean, at the same time, you can just slam it for 4 and steal a win con.
Yeah, why pay 12 or Successor 12 for a Celzino when you can just pay 4 and steal theirs?
You can steal it in a non-yellow deck, which people will not expect.
Yeah, you could steal it in a yellow deck and then play your own.
That's true. which we did see people do.
Or a green deck, more than likely a green deck, because yellow will just have Mechikabura and do that anyways.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. I think that's something that probably not a lot of people paid attention to, that last part of it.
Yeah. It's a pretty cool card, but
I don't think it's like a 4 of main board Unison, though, especially not in black, because I think if you're playing black Unison, it's either the one for skillless or it's the one for fetch X. I don't really think there's another playable one.
Yeah, I can get behind that. Other than Dark Broly, sometimes people play that Unison.
Oh, yeah. That one, it's good for the engine, though.
Yeah.
It helps you refill. But maybe this Toa, maybe it takes that place of just being black's generic Unison.
Right. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
So one of the things that people were talking about was the new Shenron Unison, the Earthling one.
From the expansion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one's pretty cool because Earthling has always been like this sub-theme with the Pan Leader and all that sort of stuff that doesn't quite get like direct attention, but gets like passive attention.
Yeah, like unintended.
Yeah, they're kind of like dragons from Magic, right? Where it's like, oh, we created this new card. It also happens to be a dragon, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm interested to see how that deck plays out or what variations of that deck are created because there's quite a large card pool for that. But I'm really liking that Shenron because he plays the 2-drop and then he can also just play your Unison if you want.
Yeah, it plays the 4-drop Vegito Unison.
Yeah.
Which can also play another 2-drop from your hand.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. I think another really cool card out of that same expansion set, I think that one's 14, is the Trunks. We talked about this when we were over at Marcus's house the other night.
Yeah, so that Trunks basically reads pick up 2 life and then put 2 cards from your hand back in your life face up.
Yes, and I know you didn't think about this until I pointed it out, but that gives you access to your entire life.
Yeah.
Because you can just choose as your final life to be one of the face-up cards. So now you have gotten to see all of your life, assuming you go down to 1 or 2.
Yeah, I was slightly concerned that, and there's no like evidence behind this concern, but I was just curious about it because there was like a big thing about, you know, picking your life in a set order or like a random order and how that could be like people could be kind of sus about that. And so I was thinking like if that card came out, what if Bandai said you have to like number your life 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You have to go 1, 2, and so forth. You know, because then like you have to go in a certain order.
I don't think they'd be able to.
Anyways,
do that.
But yeah, that was just like one of my random thoughts of like, man, that would really just suck for that deck if they did that.
Yeah.
But yeah, being able to pick your life because you put 2 up face up and then you can just pick the other 6 is like pretty cool. The other implication that I think Bandai intended was, you know, put the Trunks cards in your life.
Yeah, the Goku and the Vegeta.
Yeah, and then when you take them, you do their effect.
Yeah, that's the intended thing. But us degenerates, aka me, immediately thought of, oh my god, I can see my entire life now.
Requesting immediate ban for this card.
It's definitely not ban worthy. It's just something to pay attention to when you're looking at cards, to read the entire thing and think of the most optimal thing you can do with it. And with that card, it is, I get to see my entire life.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the other things is like, what if you have 2 dead cards? You can just slap those into your life if you need something else.
Like Unisons.
Yeah, if you need something else for the turn, but you're going to potentially get those later. It also gives your opponent knowledge, because if they have an effect that picks one of your life or something, they...
Yeah, I think the only one that does that is
Unison.
the green Vegito Unison.
Yeah, so they get to see the face down ones.
That's fine.
Actually, it's interesting too, because that card says shuffle their opponent's life after. Do you shuffle the face-up cards back in?
I
face up,
believe they would go face down at that point.
So you shuffle everything?
Yep. And then you wouldn't know.
That's super
Just
neg.
don't let them ult that unison.
That's super neg.
Yeah, don't let that happen if you're playing against Go Tanks. The Trunks deck has always looked pretty sweet, though.
Yeah, there's a lot of Trunks fans out there.
It's a cool character.
Yeah, definitely a cool character.
I think another one that we briefly mentioned before the episode today was the Garlic Jr.
Yeah, main reason is because, like, when you read those cards, there's giant paragraphs of text, and that generically correlates with good cards.
Except they're not.
Except when you read them and actually read them, they're not that good.
Yeah.
But they got some accelerants coming out soon, which is cool.
Yep, the 3-drop from the expansion is pretty good.
Yeah. And so the deck, I think it can see play, and people will play something besides from Sin, Shenron, and Yellow, which I'm sure every other color is wanting, because Sin can be annoying to play against if you don't have an out.
Yeah, definitely. Out of the other expansion, I think the two that seemed the most interesting to me was the Majin Buu for the Majin Vegeta deck. It's just another 3-drop to get from the ball. I don't remember exactly. I think that one gets your 7-drop out of deck into your hand. So it's cool, maybe like as a one of, because I think the other 3-drops are like, one of them is really good against green, the other's really good against blue. Mm-hmm. This one, it just kind of goes even, or it adds a card to your hand basically.
Yeah.
The other is the Ramp Vegeta. That thing's kind of nuts. So you play it on turn 4. It gets you your SS4 Goku Unison into play with 3 markers on it. It's a 20k blocker that will restand if you have a Unison with 2 or more markers on it at the end of turn. And also the SS4 Goku Unison basically baby hatches their next turn.
Yeah, they have to
for the most part
battle cards to swing with battle cards.
Yeah, so you're just kind of time walking on turn 4, and then you can save like your baby hatch for the next turn.
Yeah, so that's kind of interesting because you could potentially do that.
You could do that turn 3
with Zeno Unison or any other.
No, if you ramp with the leader once.
Yeah, if you ramp with the leader, it's pretty interesting. We might see so there's the Toa Overrealm, the one that gives your leader 5, ditch a card from your opponent's hand.
For green or yellow leader.
Yeah, there's a blue and red one that allows you to draw a card and give your leader 5k. That might be cool just to give some pressure with your leader.
Maybe, yeah.
Because one of the things is like they just ditch a 5k and you don't get to ramp.
Yeah, so we're seeing that's in that deck you basically have to play 4 UI Kamehamehas.
Yeah.
But yeah, that overall might be an interesting thing to test out. I think that deck might have some legs coming into the next format, especially with that card.
Yeah. So last topic I want to discuss a little bit here is how do you feel about Bandai releasing archetypes incomplete and then releasing new products with more pieces to the archetype and them kind of saying, like, I remember one of the things that we kind of inferred from a post of theirs, we as the community, was like there was an archetype that came out and it wasn't very good. And we were like, Bandai, what are you doing? And they were like, it's not done. There's going to be more support for it. How do you feel about archetypes not being completed within a set or two and or just getting support like way down the road to try and help it become good?
I feel kind of back and forth on it. I mean, obviously you don't want your sets to be like totally archetype based because then the limited format like pre-release and draft and stuff is god awful. But at the same time, you don't want to leave it too underpowered initially because then people will just never pay attention to it ever again.
Yeah.
But on the other side of that, if it's super underpowered, everything will be totally cheap. There will be a ton of supply with no demand. And then as soon as something gets revealed to, revamp the archetype, everything shoots up in price, and now there's a ton of demand and little supply. So it's kind of nice because it gives some life to old cards that didn't see play, but it's definitely a balancing act. There's some archetypes where I feel like Bandai has done a pretty good job with in that sort of thing. There's definitely others where it feels like they completely missed the mark.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So a couple things that I like is when Bandai does, let's say we have a set release, an expansion release, and a promo release, right? For tournaments or whatever, champ packs or something. And in all three of those, we get like the VegX cards, right? So we got VegX cards in the actual set, in the starter kits, and in the champ packs.
Yeah.
Which I personally liked because they were all within like a month or so of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could have your completed like VegX theme done in a month. Some things that I dislike is when, for example, like the Shinron deck.
It's taken 3 major sets.
3 sets, which obviously, sells product, and that's the whole point, is to make money and all that sort of thing. But 3 major sets to get all the dragons. And so like back in the first set of this block, we had like 3 good things to revive with the leader and 3 1-drops. Or 2 1-drops and like 3 good things to revive until we got the promo. Then there was another card. Then we got another set, a couple other dragons. And eventually, when set 12 comes, we'll have all the dragons.
Yep.
But it's like, okay, so if you're invested in Shinron, and it kind of discounts it because the deck's amazing right now, and it doesn't have all of its cards yet. But it's like, okay, so either those cards have to be better than these current cards, or they're not going to see play.
Yeah.
And so I just feel like if they condensed it a little bit and maybe strayed away from strictly archetype cards, it would, or created less gigantic archetypes mainly, maybe.
Yeah, so maybe if they had done like set 10 has 4 dragons, set 11 has the other 3 plus Omega.
Yeah, something like that.
Then you condense it down into just 2 sets. You can still have like a couple of dragon promos.
Right, that would have been pretty cool. But I guess this is reminiscent of Dragon Ball Z, how it takes 4 episodes to Kamehameha.
Yep.
So, yeah. But that was just a little, side topic about the game and their releases and sort of what we think about archetypes and how they were doing. Like anniversary boxes are always support for old things, and I don't know. I think maybe they should just focus a little more on reprints.
Yeah, maybe start putting reprints in normal sets.
That'd be cool.
Something to think about.
Yep. Tell us what you guys think, though. If you think reprints should be more prevalent, or new support cards, or even alt art cards for currently played cards, or like older card like Senzubin and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm on the side of take the Magic the Gathering approach and make your tournament promos and things like that just alternate arts of staples.
Yeah. That would be cool. That would be cool. All right, well, this is the end of our episode. Do you have any final thoughts about what we talked about today, Tim?
No, just kind of interesting to see how the end of set 11 format has panned out, especially with our kind of end of the year Pro Play Tour happening. I know we're going to be at one in a couple weeks' time. But yeah, that'll be a new format. I think the game's looking pretty good and diverse where it's at right now. And I'm excited to see how the next format pans out.
Yeah, same here. Same here. All right, guys, this is the Sideboard podcast checking out. We'll see you next time.
Peace.